The stated mission of NSA begins this way. Our purpose at New St. Andrews College is to graduate leaders who shape culture, living faithfully under the lordship of Jesus Christ. Now, as a matter of basic spiritual physics, either you will be such shapers or you will be shaped. You will either act on the world or you will be acted upon by the world.
We want to graduate students who make a dent. We want to graduate dragon slayers and or mothers of dragon slayers. We are transformationalists. We believe the gospel is going to impact the world. We believe the nations are going to be discipled. And we believe that that's going to have an impact on all of our intellectual pursuits and not just whether we're going to be moral and upright and honest. The central task is not so much to fill the student's head with facts, but rather to train the student how to think, how to live. All right? We use the great books of the West, and some of these great books are not Christian at all, which means that our students are coming up against the best that the pagans had to offer, and they learn how to interact with it. They learn how to think for themselves as responsible adults. And that means that we're primarily about formation, not information. You can't just dump a bunch of facts into a student's head and call it education.
I knew I was interested in politics and/or law by the end of high school, and I had that primarily in my mind as I was looking for colleges. I was looking at kind of more predominant, well-known, conservative, politically minded colleges. And then there was New St. Andrews that was also on my list. I think I created an application because it was free if I did it like right then. And I just remember praying really hard my senior year of high school, and I just felt that the Lord wanted me to come here and couldn't necessarily explain exactly why. I knew it was a good option. I couldn't necessarily explain why it was the option. Other than that, I felt the Lord wanted me to go here. Not that I base everything on feelings, but it seemed to be ultimately the right choice. And it didn't take me very many months of being here before I realized, yes, this was the right choice.
I'm Dexter Kaufman, and I'm from Seattle, Washington. I am a sophomore currently at NSA. Draw for NSA. I know that at NSA, I'm going to be working hard. I know I'll be pushed, and I'll be doing things that are going to be difficult for me. STEM students are viewed as more valuable in the job market than students who study philosophy or read books for a living, right? Even though those people are really critical to ensuring that our culture stays strong and that we remember the things that are valuable, right? Just because you know how to do multiplication really well, it doesn't mean that you know how to lead a family or lead a country if we're gonna go that far, right?
My name is Bryson Bostwick, and I'm from Sumner, Texas. I've lived there for the past 7 years, been in Texas my whole life. I first heard about NSA through the College Conference. Imagine this, you're a kid growing up in Texas. One summer your mom tells you, all right, we're gonna try to get you to this conference with a bunch of other teenagers up in Idaho, which I'd never been to Idaho before. Why on earth would I want to go to Idaho? Like, I had no idea what all they had prepared for me. I had a Presbyterian friend in my high school senior year that also started giving me Calvin, started giving me Augustine, and really just opened up my mind to a whole lot more of what was going on up here.
I'm Thomas Carpenter. I grew up in California, San Luis Obispo area, home of the Tri-Tip. I grew up there, grew up evangelical. I was homeschooled. Not classically homeschooled or anything like that, and this is Shepherd, my little one here. Say hi.
I'm Kayla, and I'm a senior at New St. Andrews. I've been around NSA as long as I can remember, and I used to just be a 5-year-old who was trying to make friends with all of the college students because I thought they were pretty cool. And now I get to be one of those college students myself, which is pretty neat.
We grew up kind of X29-ish. My dad didn't teach me like terminology, like predestination or Calvinism or those sorts of things. But I remember when I wanted to get baptized, my dad talked me through, you don't ask Jesus into your heart. And I grew up with an understanding of there is right and wrong theology. So I was in high school, I started listening to lots of podcasts.
You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy to be a Boy Scout. In the name Boy Scouts.
Early on it was things like Ben Shapiro and then moving into Tucker Carlson. So there's the more political things. And then sometimes Apologia had things like that, or something like Cross Politic, addressing politics from a Christian perspective. But in there, I think I just heard a podcast somewhere with Doug talking about limited atonement.
The problem with limited atonement is that it makes everybody think tiny atonement.
Mm-hmm. When I was discovering this Calvinism thing, and I thought, oh, this Pastor Doug guy, it was probably the pubcast where I heard his name along with a bunch of others. It was through that where I learned about Vodi Bakum and Dr. James White and Pastor Wilson and R.C. Sproul. And then No Quarter November launched. And that got me into trouble with various church ladies in the church that I grew up at.
If you see one of those, it indicates that there will be some sort of unqualified, high radical behavior.
Pastor Wilson sometimes says mean things, but you should go read Ezekiel and Jeremiah if you think Doug is controversial. So No Quarter November, and I think that's where I really started reading Pastor Wilson, because it was so applicable, and it was applicable to things that I was seeing in various ways. And again, that unapologetic, this is what God says, and I'm unashamed. And I was homeschooled. I was super happy to be homeschooled, but I wasn't classically educated. And I discovered this thing called classical education. And then somewhere in there, I discovered New St. Andrews College. I could get my own classical education. And I was the youth pastor's assistant at the time when I was moving this direction. And I was starting to think through a lot of the mainstream church things. Is this the best and biblical way to do things? COVID happens and my church shut down, but I was set to come out to NSA in the fall of 2020. And so moved out here before school started and got plugged into the church and got going.
Well, since I was 5, I pretty much thought I was going to come to New St. Andrews, and that was true up until I was about a sophomore or a junior in high school. And then I doubted everything, particularly because I realized a lot of why I wanted to come was just because that was the natural next step. It was easy. It was in the town where I lived, and my dad taught there, so I was super familiar with it. Those were a lot of good reasons and natural reasons for me to go to NSA. But I realized I wanted more than that, and I wanted to look into other options to see if NSA was really the best one. I didn't have much to compare it to. So I started looking at some other Christian colleges. I was also interested in nursing, so I looked into some different nursing schools.
Going through a classical education my whole life, I had done classical conversations actually, all through from 6 years old through high school. And I was just done with it. I was like, there's no point in this. What are we even doing? I know I had heard from teachers over and over again, like, we go through the process. We have grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric. We do the trivium, and I never was completely sold on that. I was like, well, yeah, that's cool, but how is that gonna help me in my Christian walk? How is that gonna draw me closer to Christ? I had no intention of going to college. I did not think I was the academic type. I didn't really want to pursue a college education. And I thought I was going to go into a trade school. I wanted to do HVAC or electrical. And I was like, I can use my hands. I'd been doing construction and odd jobs here and there. And it's like, I want to make money and impact my community right here, right now.
My dad had some reservations about me going to NSA. There's definitely a stereotype of liberal arts students. Everyone has the joke about, you get a liberal arts degree, you're gonna end up a barista, right? You're gonna be working at Starbucks. They might They might be a philosophy major who might be able to tell you about Rousseau and Kant, and they might have some interesting conversations at the dinner table, but they're not a moneymaker and they can't really provide for their family very well. So that was definitely the stereotype that my dad was worried about, and it was definitely a challenge that he wanted to make sure I acknowledged. He wanted to make sure that I understood if I want to go back and live in Seattle, I need to find a career that's going to make enough money for me to live there. He kind of gathered some information and walked me through, like, here's what you're going to have to do if you want to live in Seattle again comfortably.
It wasn't until I think it was like October of 2022 that I ran into Ian Anderson. He was the call coordinator the first year I was there. Could be nothing but the Lord's providence that he just saw me wearing a college shirt and was like, oh my goodness, someone from Idaho, and pulled me aside. I talked to that guy for like 3 or 4 hours. Yeah, he was like, if you want to impact the world in ways you've never thought were even possible, if you want to be a Christian who is completely sold out for Christ, NSA is the best way to go to further your walk with Christ, to pursue leadership, to impact the culture around you. And I think I got back home like 3 days later and started doing everything I needed to fill out an application.
I remember I had one conversation with an NSA alumni. I think she was a senior at the time, or maybe she had just graduated. But we were chatting, and she said that she also had considered doing nursing leading up to NSA. And I was asking her, oh, how did you decide between the two?
Hi, welcome to New St. Andrews College 2024 Candidate Forum.
And she said that she looked at the people who were coming out of NSA, and she thought to herself, I want to be like those people, especially in comparison to a lot of the people that are coming out of secular universities and even some Christian colleges. So that was really influential to me, to really look around at the people that I had grown up with and the people who were graduating from NSA, a lot of whom I knew at that point, and think, are those the kind of people that I want to be like? People see college as just preparing you for a specific job field or developing a particular skill set. That's not something that's necessarily wrong to look for in a college, but I think we've lost seeing education as something that shapes you as a person, that shapes your heart and your mind and your soul.
A lot of people don't stick with a job that applies to their major, right? So you get the major, but you end up moving careers, or something happens and you have to find a job somewhere else, and you don't actually end up doing that job. So what were those 4 years spent for? What were those 6 years spent for a master's, right? All that money, and was it actually all that valuable? I knew that NSA would be valuable every step of the way. That's something I want to bet on.
Just right around midfield, I've got a couple over there already.
You have to use like the spikes to like roll it. That's the only
Just gonna break its foot.
Got me up. Oh yeah.
The reason I came to NSA is because you have multiple vocations in your life, and it's not just your job. It's not just the way you make money. And a lot of people these days prioritize college as the thing that's going to help you make money. And what they don't realize is they need to make sure that they're going to be a good father, that they're going to be able to raise their sons to be strong men who will follow in their footsteps and be better than them, and then take the culture on in the same way that you did. Without the right worldview, and without the right training, and without the right rigor, you aren't going to be able to train your kids to do that. You might be able to make money for them, But that doesn't mean that you're going to be raising them and teaching them to be strong men who know how to fight hard and to work hard and who will take on whatever comes at them.
It is an education that is for the whole man, and God made us body and soul. Your body matters, and I was getting pretty hammered freshman Latin and not doing very well. And my Latin professor here at NSA told me to go do a Spartan challenge in order to improve my Latin. Paul, when he's talking about fighting spiritual battles and ruling yourself, he's using athletic metaphors. He's talking about running the race, he's talking about wrestling, he's talking about boxing. If you don't know what it is to be on the gym floor or on the field, when you are coming against spiritual temptation and the spiritual fight, you don't actually know how to translate that.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for your kindness. We thank you for your goodness to us. We thank you for the week before us. I pray for your blessing on these students and all the academic work they still have ahead. I pray you bless this food. In your son's name, amen. Amen.
The 4 years of college from 18 to 22 are some of the most transformative and life-shaping years in every young man and woman's life. And I'm not in any way denigrating or downplaying the parenting that went before that or the K-12 education that they received. That was all absolutely important and foundational, but you just can't deny those years as you go from 18 to 22, as you become a responsible adult, and you begin making decisions for yourself with your own finances, with regard to where you're going to worship on Sunday, whether you're going to go to bed at 11 o'clock or 3 a.m.
That's when you're kind of choosing who you're going to be, right? Once you reach 20, 25, and you're living on your own, or you're separated from your parents for a long amount of time, your whole world changes. And if there's no one around to say like, hey, have you actually read your Bible recently? Or even just talk in a Christianly fashion, it's really easy to just fall off and just ride the waterfall.
Soup night, basically just all these freshmen get together on Tuesday nights and just to enjoy fellowship, enjoy a meal together. And especially as a freshman, that is really nice having one meal accounted for every Tuesday night. I'd say those have been like the ice-breaking moments of this is real. I'd say that's where you really get to meet your friends and get to know who everyone is, why they ended up here, and what God's doing in their lives.
When you step into that world, those initial years are some of the most life-shaping years in your entire life. And I would say a man could live 90 or 100 years. Those 4 years have more impact on his life than any other time. Students will often say, if I say to them, what was the most important and impactful thing that you had during your time at New St. Andrews? They'll always get a little bit embarrassed. They'll say, you know, actually it wasn't NSA, it was the community. And that's, they shouldn't be embarrassed. That's by design. Like that's actually how we want it to be. There is this community here that has a profound impact on our students. Moscow is this really unique place. On a typical Sunday morning, this town has about 25,000 people in it. On a typical Sunday morning, at least 3,000 of those people are worshiping just in one of our denominational church plants. And then there's a pile of other evangelical churches on top of that. It makes for this really, because it's a small town, but with this really vibrant community, it makes for this very robust kind of fellowship, mentorship, and whatnot that's available that I just don't think you find anywhere else. You know, there's a way to always, in most big towns, big universities, you can always kind of just fade into the background. It's very difficult to be anonymous here because we all know each other. You go to the grocery store, you're gonna meet 5 people that you know from school or from church or whatever. You're not anonymous anywhere. You can't lose your temper when you're driving in traffic because you're gonna find out you're screaming at your pastor or something like that. I think you have a community that takes being a Christian very seriously, and it takes it seriously not just as something that's true inside my heart, The Christ Church motto is all of Christ for all of life, for all of Moscow. So it's all of Christ, which means I need to read all of his word. I can't just have little theme verses that I like to dwell on. I need to read all his word, and I need to apply that to all of my life. There's nowhere where I can hold back and say, no, I'm not going to obey him there. It's for all of my life, and it's for all of this town.
The God of Reformed theology, the God of Calvinism, is an in-your-face God. He relates to everything. If God is sovereign over every hair, every atom, every molecule, then he's certainly Lord over English, and Lord over Greek verbs, and Lord over history. And so we want Christians who are no longer thinking like schizophrenics, okay, where they have incompatible ideas bouncing around in their head, as Lewis says in Screwtape Letters. We want them to be able to engage with the claims that are thrown at them and respond to those claims having thought through them like a Christian would. Christ is the arche in Colossians 1. Christ is the one in whom all things hold together. Without him, they all fly apart. In a genuine liberal arts education, the queen of the sciences, the queen of all these disciplines, is theology. You can't leave theology out of it. If you take away theology or take away the study of God and his revelation of himself to man, if you extract that, then what you have is what I call a cut flower college. Without theology, without Christ, you have a bunch of flowers with no root ball. Christ is not optional to a true liberal arts education. You can have knockoff liberal arts education, but it's going to deteriorate. The flowers are going to wither.
So you ask about the beginning. I was sort of in the room where it happened. I was pressing my nose up against the window pane of those who were designing New St. Andrews, and I was involved in some of those conversations. My contribution, I think, was a token one back then. I was in my 20s. And the key founders at the time were Douglas Jones, Douglas Wilson, Roy Atwood. And then also coming along was a gentleman named Warren Roby, who was a linguist who was teaching over at Washington State. And the idea was to establish a college that would cut a different figure than today's modern research universities. The classical education movement, classical Christian education movement, had been going strong, alive and well through Logos School here in Moscow. And I think having been marinated in that, with that experience, some leaders in the community became convinced that some of the same reasons for starting a K-12 day school, some of those same reasons apply just as well to the finishing of young people in their education. You get them up through grade 12, and what is the difference between grade 12 and grade 13?
Well, the years were going by, and Becca, who had entered her kindergarten year when Logos started in 81, was approaching graduation. And she took her SATs and did very well on her SATs. And I don't know how these things work, but that put her on a mailing list. And she started to get mailers and flyers from Christian colleges all over the country. From these flyers, I concluded that the purpose of Christian higher education in North America was to eat pizza, ride horses, and make lifelong friends. There was nothing about, if you come here, we're going to make you work like a dog and read big fat books. Nothing. It was like exciting times at youth camp. I was sort of dismayed by this because by the time Becca was heading into her senior year, she was all dressed up and no place to go. We can't just do all this for 12 or 13 years and then just step off a cliff and or grow the wheat up to almost harvest and then mow it and not harvest it. There needs to be a period that harvests what we're doing. And that's where New St. Andrews was born.
We had 4 students that gathered at the Atwoods' breakfast table, basically, met at their table. And with 4 students, you don't need a big building or a big facility. And insofar as they need a faculty, there were 4 teachers, each of whom were able to deliver a class to 4 students.
I'm mindful of Mark Twain's comment about education. What you need for education is a log with a teacher on one end and a student on the other. That's the basic thing that you need.
And this is the newly renovated Merkle Student Center game room.
You don't need a stadium. You don't need dorms. You don't need a radio station. You don't need a lazy river.
This year, the University of Akron is giving students a unique way to catch up on their Z's.
There are 4 nap pods at 3 locations across campus.
You don't need all the things.
Annually, we host a Therapy Dogs event to allow for students to kind of relax during finals week.
Obviously, you're going to need at some point a roof to keep the rain off. But the beating heart of education is teachers and students and a love for learning. That's what's going on.
So if you're someone who is disillusioned with the American university offerings that are out there right now, I think the first thing I would say is congratulations. I think you have the beginnings of wisdom. You're seeing something profound, and it's really important to see that now. What you're seeing through is the remains of a once great system that has been rotted out, and you're seeing a bunch of rot on the table. But if you could go back a couple of days, you could see when that table was a feast, and you're looking at the putrefaction on the table and you're saying, I need none of that. And you're walking off and then scavenging in the wilderness when you actually could come to the table when it's a feast. And the thing is, the current American system, it is a rotted mess, but it's a rotted mess of something that was once profound. And it was profound in a way that is a significant part of what made America great and is what made Western culture great. That's what we want to rebuild.
What we did is we started with the curriculum of 17th century Harvard. What was Harvard doing back before they went bad? What were they doing in the 1600s? And we started with that curriculum and wanted to build off of that.
So in the second year, everyone who was teaching NSA included some outside hirelings like me and that original core faculty. And then the board of New St. Andrews decided that, we're either going to keep delivering this education to students that are already here or have it be a fly-by-night idea that just passes in the wind. I think because we had students here and we'd had them for 2 years, there was a sense of commitment that we need to carry through with this. And so then in NSA's third year, they actually hired me to be full-time. And I was the first full-time hire, the first person for whom NSA was not a side hustle.
You've already had this massive movement at the K-12 level that we've seen ripple across America. Now you have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of K-12 kids getting this classical Christian education. And it really has completely transformed the K-12 space, where everybody knows about classical education, and I think it's achieved appropriately this really impressive reputation. And now everybody is looking to the colleges, and we're starting to see this massive failure at the college level. NSA was taking that first experiment and pushing it all the way through to the college level. And I think now we've been here a good bit of time now, and I think we've established that actually this experiment has also worked, and that what we're doing at the college level is, I think, unique and incredibly needed at this time. Specifically, NSA exists to graduate leaders and shapers of culture under the lordship of Jesus Christ. When you look at most Christian liberal arts colleges, they all have leadership somewhere in their mission statement. They tend to, at least. And that's because that's what the liberal arts degree was originally intended to do. It was supposed to basically take your best and your brightest and turn them into the sort of cadre of cultural leaders in your nation. Unfortunately, most liberal arts colleges have betrayed that mission and have watered down the curriculum, been completely co-opted by woke virtue signaling, and really don't have a sense of what really distinct cultural leadership looks like anymore. At NSA, we've deliberately recovered this time-honored method of honing and training the cultural leader mind, which is that liberal arts curriculum. We've embedded it in this comprehensive Christian worldview, this idea of Christ over all, in this community that's robust and faithful in worshiping God, and then use that as a place to take kids from all over America, bring them here, use this liberal arts curriculum and this faithful community to nurture them, mentor them, and basically equip them to be this next generation of cultural leaders. And that's what we're here for.
I teach Herodotus in classes, and I would say secular environments today, within the context of research universities. You might see Herodotus read, but Herodotus would be read to serve an end of equipping someone to be historians rather than to be men and to be women. And so the things that you're going to extract out of Herodotus might be, if you're pursuing it as a work of history, you are developing the kind of faculties that equip you to specialize in understanding the past so that then you can become a formulator of history yourself and a researcher, a research technician. Whereas here at New St. Andrews, we read Herodotus with a different end in view. We read Herodotus because we want to commune with an ancient Greek mind, this man who lived in Halicarnassus, traveled the known world as it was known to him. He had experiences that he reflected upon, and so it increases the range of human experience that our students can learn from, and then learn how to develop as they love God and love their neighbor. All classical education, including the classical education that even the pagan Romans and the Greeks pursued, was education that recognized that ultimate reality lies outside of a person and that there is one coherent reality that's bigger than us. And so then education is the process of forming someone to conform them to the reality that is bigger than they are. Okay, so even the pagans understood that. In today's most postmodern age, we've even rejected that much. But what is ultimate reality? Ultimate reality is the triune God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who formed man to serve him and who came to be a man in the person of Jesus Christ, who lived and died and rose again from the grave. And so, in fellowship with Jesus Christ, with the one true God, that is how we conform to objective reality that's bigger than we are.
A classical education is how any sort of respectable man from the past that you revere was educated. Augustine, King Alfred, Thomas Aquinas, John Calvin, and all the reformers, the Puritans, Jonathan Edwards, George Washington, John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, all these great men that we revere, that we tell our children stories of, and we call our sons to be like these men. All of them were classically educated. A liberal arts education teaches you how to be free, how to be a liberated person, and it's what prepares you for any field. So the classical education is the sort of education that prepares you for going into law, or going into medicine, or going into the pastorate, or going into business. And it's the sort of education that prepares you for all of life. One of the big things this year is working on thesis. I'm in the middle of writing it right now. I defended it last term, passed with flying colors, which was really encouraging. So now I've just got to write it and have it completed before Christmas break.
I think one of the things that's been really neat about doing your thesis is it's a topic that you've chosen, and it's not necessarily a topic that you've really covered, at least in depth, in any of your other classes at New St. Andrews. And so, in a sense, it's your professors setting you free on a material and saying, okay, can you take what you've learned and the approaches and concepts and tools that you've been given and apply it to this whole new material and do something productive and fruitful with it. You spend a term researching in preparation for a defense where your professors decide whether or not you're ready to write. And then you spend a term, Lord willing, writing your thesis. So I'm in the middle of the writing term, which there's a very large word count looming over my head. And just little by little trying to get there.
Yeah, as part of the senior thesis, I will stand in front of a couple professors and I will defend my thesis. It will look like a brief presentation and also a brief period of Q&A. Depending on how well I'm prepared, that will feel longer or shorter. I just have to be able to be prepared to answer pretty much anything. So it's going to be a lot of prep for a very short performance, and I'm trying not to take any chances with that.
Life is very busy. I thought that I was busy and didn't have time for things freshman and sophomore year. But in fact, life gets only busier. And you only have to fit more things into your schedule. But that's part of the growth in education is, I mean, it's like if you go into the gym. As you go to the gym and you're consistent with it, you progressively add more and more weight. And it is heavier and heavier, but you're building muscle to be able to carry more.
The question before us today is one that has awakened the flame of freedom in the breast of blue-collar Christendom and driven frigid terror into the crowns of kings since the discovery of physics. Mainly this: should there be no limit to the kind of weapons private citizens are allowed to possess, provided they are competent to use them? There are many paths we could tread in this debate, but there are a few main ones.
Pastor Wilson says authority flows to those who take responsibility, and related concepts to that, where your responsibility only increases. But if you take it on, God actually strengthens you to be able to take on more.
The flame of freedom in the breast of blue-collar Christendom and frigid terror in the crown of kings, right? And I think the tendency everybody's going to tend to go is either this is really important or I have no idea what's going on. Right? Because ordinarily when we get to that kind of high exalted language, either it's a really important point or someone's trying to mask what they're doing.
My goal is to go to law school. And that's one of the reasons that actually drew me to NSA was I was in high school thinking I wanted to go to law school. What kind of undergrad do I want to get? The typical answer would be, major in political science or maybe history or economics, or some people even do a pre-law major. But I realized that the liberal arts were going to be a great prep for law school. But at least as far as I know, on this side of it, it's not really going to shape the character and the affections that uses those tools correctly. So I think it is really important for people who are going to law school to make sure they get an undergrad education that is not just prep for law school. Because law school will teach you the tools, but here, my time at NSA, which has definitely not been a pre-law major or a pre-law program, has definitely been the kind of character shaping and wisdom forming education that's going to teach me how to use those tools correctly when the time finally comes for me to learn them.
God's reward for getting through a challenge and succeeding with this weight is to say, congrats, man, here's 15 more pounds. Life is busier and more difficult, but you also get stronger as you keep going. So senior year, married with a baby, is very busy. I'm either working or studying. Sometimes, Anna's got to take care of something, and so then I've got to hold the baby, and I'm not getting homework done, but I still manage to get my homework done. And I have better grades now than I did when I was working 15 hours a week freshman year, and really struggling. Now married, working, and a baby, I have better grades. These are my best grades that I've had in my whole time at NSA.
Aside from just the academic practices, though, my time at NSA has really increased my appreciation for the role of solid philosophy in discussions about basically anything. And I think that's especially appropriate for the legal context nowadays, because the world doesn't need any more lawyers that are just technicians and just know how to manipulate the tools of law and just know how to read the words on the page and apply it to a case. The world needs more lawyers who understand what government is for. And only when you understand what government is for can you understand what government should do. And only when you understand what government should do can you understand what laws should be passed, what doctrines should be upheld. And so if I hadn't had the exposure at NSA to thinking about what are things really, not just how they appear to be, what is the essence of the thing I'm talking about, I don't think I would have had as much of a clear direction for where to go with my thesis, where I am addressing a legal doctrine on the basis of what is the essence of government and what is government for and what's the kind of power it's given and should government be able to give that power away.
The thesis is the culmination of the undergraduate program at New St. Andrews College. Students complete the thesis to the honor of Jesus Christ and in accordance with the mission of the college, our understanding of the liberal arts and humanities, and the intellectual skills that our degree program seeks to develop. In some cases, many cases even, students exhibit both the ambition and ability to produce truly excellent work, projects closer to graduate or professional work with clear and timely applicability to our present moment, projects rooted in a deep understanding of and love for our tradition, and projects which challenge all of us to aim higher and perform better. So on the advice of faculty advisors and readers, I would like to commend and invite forward the following students. First, Kayla Erb. Thomas Carpenter. And finally, and in particular, Caleb Kreft.
I am John Lewis. You want more information than that? I'm John Lewis. I graduated from New St. Andrews in 2004, and I live in Dallas, where I have a real estate development, real estate private equity company. I have a Bachelor of Arts in liberal arts, and I have a business degree, and I've pursued a career in business for the last 20 years. And I can tell you which one of those degrees has been the most influential. And it's not the business degree. New St. Andrews has been huge for my career, for my family. My wife is a graduate of New St. Andrews, and so that has shaped everything. That's shaped our children, shaped our home life, shaped where we go to church, shaped how we spend our time, and what we think it looks like to shape culture and make a dent. I think if someone were to tell me I'm thinking about doing real things, so that's going to somehow limit my NSA career, I would say, let's talk about what those real things are, and you're probably not aiming high enough. The more actual real things, and by real things, I'm talking about important things. I'm not talking about real things in the sense that I can go do something that's real, like make a sandwich, right? By real, I'm talking about important things that you would want to tell your grandchildren about, and that impact generations. And I think if you're going to do that, then your ability to accomplish those things by God's grace is going to be far more impacted by things that NSA is good at teaching students.
I think that charge is really striking for especially the folks who go through freshman year and decide, this isn't worth it, I just want to go do stuff. You have quit a very hard decision for something that's actually a lot easier. I can start just building stuff and go, it's really easy to just go do stuff, but Has your mind been shaped towards reason, and has your soul been shaped towards virtue? So that way you know who you are, who God is, and what you need to do, and what needs to happen in society. The state of our political leaders now are all the guys who didn't do any of this sort of studying and just jumped right into a career in politics.
After New St. Andrews, I went to Vanderbilt and got a Master's of Science in Finance. And I was in classes with a number of business majors for that finance degree. And the point at which I caught up to those undergraduate business majors was after the first quarter. So I had to work hard to catch up, but NSA prepared me to do that. And then after the first quarter, we were essentially on equal footing, except we weren't exactly on equal footing, because what impacted our education from that point and our success for that degree was the ability to learn quickly. And so I think it was easy to see NSA's impact, even sort of out of the gates, starting it in that postgraduate degree.
At convocation, all of the incoming freshmen signed the big giant book that NSA has for the very first time. And then at commencement every year, the graduating seniors, there's the wine rite where the faculty tell the graduating seniors to whom much is given, and all the seniors say much is required. Especially getting to sign the book for the very last time at graduation and to actually say the wine rite. It meant something totally different after going through the 4 years. And I'm sure my eyes haven't even been opened to the many ways in which this education has blessed me and the gifts that I've been given through it. So much of what I think and what I know about music and the arts came from my parents. And I don't remember a time when we weren't singing around the home. If I get to do one thing in shaping culture, I want to have a musical home and raise musical kids.
I really hope to see Christian leaders, men who actually understand their people and place. That's what I hope that I can have one small part in, and actually shaping our political institutions in a direction that actually knows who God is and actually cares for the American people to shape our laws in such a way that it shapes our people towards virtue and towards the one true and living God.